Hello, and welcome to the Radio No Talkback for Starbucks and Target by Kelly Morton. This is a part of No Theater's virtual Play Underground series brought to you by Joe Mock and the Real Pro team at Cutler Real Estate. Please, if you're out there, raise your glass to Joe Mock and the Real Pro team. Tonight, as our talkback guests, we have the writer and director of the show, Kelly Morton. We also have Josh Wallace, who plays the Dungeon Master, aka Anifsrol, Rachel Gazee, who plays Husavik, and Tone Branson, who plays Vigintils. And also me, I'm Zach Robinson. I didn't write this in the script, but I'm the Artistic and Community Relations Manager. That's my job. Hi, everybody. How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Great.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Before we jump into all of like the formal questions and things, could we go around and everybody say what your fantasy character's name is for their Starbucks and Target character?
I'll go first because I never changed it out of Zoom, evidently. The name is Anifsrol, which is a great Dungeons and Dragons inspired name. Good job, Kelly.
Thanks.
Well, my name was I gotta be careful about exactly what I say here. Vigintils. Was it Vigintils? Vigintils. But my character's character name was Karen Anderson.
I'm sorry. Could you say that again? I didn't quite catch it.
It's Karen. What's the hard K? Karen.
Use your prairie throat.
Use your prairie throat.
To understand these jokes and more, you need to download your copy of the show at notheater.com/merchandise for just $5.
Yes.
Who's next?
I think me. Yeah. So I was Dequalia. And then her Starbucks and Target name was Liz, working mom, obviously going to Target to let off some steam, of course.
So now that we have all the names out, let's go ahead and go into questions. Our first one is for you, Kelly. Would you please tell us what your inspiration for the show was, and a rundown of how you came up with all these fantasy names?
Sure. So the idea was kind of born out of necessity. My play Intramarital Affairs had just been eliminated off of serials, and I was like, okay, I need to come up with a new one. And I have my original cast, Michael and Colleen, who I'm 100% using them again. And Tone and I are very good friends, and I was like, no matter what I do, I want Tone to be in the show. And then I was like, okay, so I've got 3 people. What would 3 people do online together during a pandemic? And I was like, well, I've been playing D&D. What if they do a D&D campaign? And then I was like, well, if I'm doing D&D campaign, then I need Josh and I need Nicole. So I was like, okay, so now I have a cast of 5. That's like literally how it came about. And I was just joking with my partner, Joe, and I was like, what if it was this like a D&D campaign, but like backwards? And it was like a whole bunch of weird mythical creatures who just did boring things. And he laughed at that. And when he laughs, it's a good sign because he doesn't laugh at a ton of stuff. So I was like, all right, there it is. I got it.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, Joe's the person I bounce ideas off of. And if he smiles or chuckles, I'm like, there it is. I got it. As far as the names, the name Husavik, which is Nicole's character, came because I had just watched the Eurovision movie on Netflix, and that's the name of the town in Iceland where they're from. There's a whole song called Husavik, and I just loved that. I loved that song. I loved that word, and I was like, well, Nicole's delightful. All of the rest of the names I just completely made up. I literally just started writing letters, and I was like, and I just squished them together. I think my favorite one is Guajnot, because everyone got in the habit of just calling him Guaj. And I was like, what a great nickname. And Vigentils was literally just, I liked the way all of the letters looked next to each other, like a V, a J, and an I without little dots. And I was like, let's see how they pronounce it.
That's really fun. Did you even with that last one, did you even have a pronunciation in mind, or were you just waiting for interpretation?
Kind of. I was like, it could be like Vigentals, but Vientals, because the J could be silent, or just Yentals, or Yently. I don't know. I think like Josh was the person who kind of like settled on how it really was pronounced, because he said the character's name the most. So I think it was still changing like a couple of times into rehearsals. Like we just kept calling him different things.
All of this is the most serial story I've ever heard.
It's also a very Dungeons and Dragons story.
Yes.
Yep.
That's all really fantastic. It's one of the things I love most about serials is just like the invention through necessity.
Mhm.
And you created such a wonderful, fun thing just out of like, I have 5 people. Let's go.
Yeah, thanks.
For all our long time Play Underground listeners out there, this is going to be a little bit different tonight. Normally we play some audio samples, but I am doing all the tech tonight, and I am not competent enough to play audio samples while running a live stream and hosting. So we're going to focus on questions tonight. And if you're curious about anything, about how the play sounds, anything like that, you can get your own copy at notheater.com/merchandise for just $5. So let's jump into things right up top. Speaking of Josh and names, you're the dungeon master in this, and
Well,
you are a
target
dungeon master in real life. Yeah.
It's true. I've been outed. Yes, I play D&D. Most weeks.
Did you incorporate any of your like normal DM tricks into playing a niece role?
I love this question. Dungeon mastering is kind of an act of improvisation. You know where you want it to go, but and props to Kelly for how she wrote this out. There's like this idea of what's going to happen, and then just the characters take a hard right turn, and all of it is figuring out, okay, now what are we going to do? And I thought, oh, that won't be a problem because we're working with a script. And then you invited a bunch of improvisers to come and join us. And so even the script wasn't any good. So it actually wound up, I was using a lot of those same like improv, yes, and type skills to deal with whatever garbage Tone happened to put out in the microphone that day. It was a lot of fun. I used a couple of character voices, but if you listen to people who are really professional, and there's some terrific professional Dungeons and Dragons players out there, I know that's a career. They do some great voices, and I feel like I was just climbing and aspiring towards that. It was a really great opportunity to practice it.
You did great voices.
Yes, the
Thank
voices
you.
were amazing. I love them.
It was fun.
I especially love the voice that you gave to the manager, which kind of felt like, was that from Hometown kind of voice?
You know, I was going for like Gaston, but even more evil, and it just kind of worked.
I love it. That's fantastic. Since we're talking about D&D and D&D related things, that's Dungeons and Dragons for people that aren't in the know. Do any of you actually play Dungeons and Dragons or any other role-playing games in real life? And did you bring any aspects of those things the same way Josh brought in aspects of his dungeon mastering into playing your fantasy and non-fantasy character in this?
I'm still like very, very new to like D&D. Like I've played it a few times, and I'm still very much like, well, why can't I do this thing? I'll get so angry. But like, why can't I do this? What's the why can't? It's all made up. Why can't I? And so that's definitely like, I definitely put that aggression into there because that's just who I am as a person.
And your dungeon
You can
master's like,
definitely
Rachel,
feel Liz's
nobody can
aggression
divide
in
by
there.
0.
My dungeon master is Josh. We started playing online at the beginning of the pandemic, but he was just starting to teach me right before like all of this pandemic stuff happened. So it was kind of like my weekly, like, I'm going to socialize with people sort of thing. So it was like definitely a joy, and I'm very thankful for Josh for putting that together. And my thing about D&D is that the improv part of it is my absolute favorite part. I'm like you, Rachel, like, why can't I do something? I'm just gonna make it up. So my character is a bit of a chaos monkey. So like if they're the character that I play in D&D, so like if there's like oh my god, there's this giant gong, I'm gonna ring it, like and then like a giant like turtle monster comes out and kills everyone. I'm like, oh no, my bad, you guys. So that's kind of what inspired the character of Guajnot, who gets bored while everyone is talking about things, and he's like, I'm gonna go do this thing, and then like he winds up destroying a bunch of stuff. Like, so
I love that.
Guajnot's kind of me.
You know, I grew up with D&D all around me, as it sort of came to life when I was a kid, and you know, there was a small little cadre of kids that were playing, you know, Dungeons and Dragons and like the teacher's lounge or whatever. But I never caught on, and I'm a very novice player. I even had to have somebody like help me build a character, and I have this one character
That's
who's
the
like
hardest part.
who's like a bard, and I named her Dolly Spartan. And what I learned in playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you know, the listeners don't know this, but I'm a local improviser. I perform with an improv company, and a lot of my friends are improvisers. Dungeons and Dragons is not the best forum for a bunch of people who just want to create bits and be funny and talk, because you'll never leave the cart. You'll never leave the desert. You'll never get into a battle because we're just riffing for 2 hours. So
I disagree. That's sometimes the best D&D session, is where you get nothing done and you just had a fun time dicking around with your friends. Speaking of you, Tone, and your extensive background in improv in the area, you play the wizard of the group Vigentials, and you did a lot of improv on the script for like different punchlines and retorts to characters. What was one of your favorites, and how do you get into the mind of improving in character?
well, I was told by a very reliable source, that source being Kelly Morton, that the character was written with me in mind. And I feel like she left a lot of open doors for me to add little bits and pieces. And luckily, you know, the writer and the director was very open to your improv and wasn't very wedded to her script, which was dynamite without any improvisation. I didn't have to add anything. I just need to, because I demand this center of attention. And you know, the thing with improv is when you're doing it, as soon as it exits your mouth, it goes into the ether, and you really don't remember. There are many times, having left the stage, just done 20 minutes, and I go into another room and somebody's like, "Hey, that was great when you said that thing," and I'm like, "What did I say? Tell me what I said. I don't remember what I said." Because it's gone. It's just gone out of me. There was a line that's actually in the recording, which, if anybody's interested, you can access it where?
At notheater.com
At
/merchandise
/merchandise, where you can hear the entire broadcast. I say something along the lines of "shut up, troll, and drink your butt juice," which,
referring, of course, to beer.
Ale, I believe that's what he was drinking. And as improv lines go, that's a pretty golden one. That's
pretty much a home run.
That's
in
top
the
of my
improv
list.
game.
In terms of what I do to get into the mindset of a character, it would probably be just like any other actor. I went to design school here in Cincinnati at DAP, and I had a professor who told us on day one that if you're going to be a good designer, you need to feed your head. You need to go to movies, watch TV, read books, read magazines, travel, talk to other people, explore other cultures, get, assimilate it all, because that will all inform your design. Well, I can say the same thing about improv and or acting, is that the deeper your well of knowledge is, the more stuff you can bring out of it. So I just go diving into my own well.
Amazing. And that probably also ties into the knowledge with D&D itself and your at least novice background in it.
That's true, but I've seen a lot of movies.
Yeah. We have another question before we go to our open floor questions. Rachel, you play Zaqualia, who I think is a vampire. I don't know. I just remember that's how it looked when it was in serials originally.
I think she's a tiefling. I think that's what she. Yes. Okay. Great.
Okay, got it. Now I understand. You were also, in addition to this cast from the original serials lineup, obviously you had to do a little bit more homework than the rest of everyone else to jump into this. So, how did you prepare to play this character and their character?
Yeah. So fortunately, like I got to watch the show during serials and like it was so fun. I loved watching it. So I was really excited when I was asked to be in it too. And like Kelly was really welcoming. All of the cast was really welcoming. And like straight away, Kelly said to me and Nick, who also had to sub in, like don't try to mimic like the other people's performances, like do your own thing, which is really great because then like it just opened up so much freedom and like there weren't any expectations of like is she gonna be as good or anything like that. So that was really awesome. And it was also great because it's a radio play that there was really only like one other feminine voice. And so I didn't have to worry about like differentiating how I sounded too much either, which was great. But in terms of like preparing for it and getting into it, of course I'd seen it before. And so like I understood the assignment, which was aggression, because that's usually my assignment when it comes to acting. And I'm always down for that. I'm always ready to just get into it. So I was able to do that. And Kelly was always like, yes, even more. So definitely just can we play the game? Like I'm all about it. And I loved being able to like express that. My friends know that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes if they're playing something with me and I'm like, let's do this thing, I'm the one who's like, can we play the game, please? Can we just do that?
I love that. So you were essentially typecast without
pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you did a fantastic job jumping into everything, and everybody did a fantastic job. I know because I listened to them, and you can listen to them too at notheater.com/merchandise for just $5. Before we wrap things up tonight, we have a couple of questions for everybody. So the first one, how was working remotely? I know that it can be challenging. So everybody, that is an open question. How was it working remotely?
For me, I'm really good about working to prompts. So for me, I was like, okay, I know I'm writing a show that is going to be remote and I'm going to write it in a way that it is going to be okay that it's remote. So actually it worked out really well for me. It was really nice. I had my little notebook. I just like plugged in. I had a little snacky. And it worked really well. It would have been a lot harder if I had like written a play for like a stage and then had to transfer it online. But having written it specifically for this format, it was actually very easy.
Great.
For me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
The radio play format is pretty forgiving about things like still reading from the script while you're recording.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially as the target master, I had an awful lot to say, which is totally not how I normally go through my life. Right. But anyway, so being there in my little like soundproof box thing, reading off of my phone, that was kind of nice.
I want to second that. Yeah. Not having to memorize my lines was dynamite. They were all just directly below the frame. And if I lean a certain way, you can't tell if I'm reading or if I'm looking at the camera. So that was nice. Some of it was scheduling, just getting everybody in the same place on the same night. And, sometimes we were, working late into rehearsals, which isn't always great. And when you're doing a play, or big one or I don't know, a small one, there's no feedback, there's no laughter, there's nothing like that. Every once in a while Kelly would go off mute and we would hear her cackle, but she was pretty silent for the most part. She would take her off of audio, but I like that feedback, that lets me know I'm going into a good direction.
So the biggest thing is just kind of missing the audience. Yeah,
the human magic that happens when people get in the same room.
Yeah.
So I think for pretty much everyone except Kelly, this is your first time doing like DIY recording, at least at this scale. Do you think there's skills in here that you've learned that are going to help with like future projects, and how was learning process for you?
It was a lot easier than I expected. I think it's like, radio play, technical stuff. And I think like for me, there was assumption like it's going to be like a lot of like jargon and all that. And it really wasn't. And like Zach was really helpful for everyone who's watching. Zach was so incredibly helpful in the whole thing. And even just like setting up like a miniature sound booth in the corner of my room turned out to be like easier than I expected. And it was like, oh, I've suddenly got like an audio booth in this tiny corner. And I never would have imagined doing that. So that's definitely something I'm excited to like use again.
Can I just say, there has not been enough kudos bestowed upon you, Rachel and Nick, for jumping in and taking on these roles so well that the cast who had been working with other actors didn't need to do anything. You guys were just seamless into the cast, and that was pretty great.
Thank you.
Oh, there's a car passing outside my window.
Things you worry about when you're doing DIY recording.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was, speaking of that, there was another, so Josh and Nicole live downtown by a fire station. So like we had to be, that's one thing about the home recording and the home like theater. We had to like incorporate the sounds of it. Like during rehearsals, Tone would say stuff like, there isn't it like, if it was weird, they were in Target, like, it's the alarms, they know we're here. And it was just a fun little like bit that just happened every other rehearsal or so.
Having produced, I think, 13 of these now, that's a thing that happens with literally every single one. It's a fun game of playing. It's like being a kid again and playing ball in the street, and you have to look out for cars the whole time.
Yeah.
I think even during one of our recording sessions, there was like a helicopter flying by and we had to pause for a moment. I guess people fly helicopters around downtown. Okay.
That's just my paparazzi.
Oh, sure.
I don't know how to get rid of them.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with what Tone said about Rachel and Nick, because Michael and Colleen did such an amazing job in Serials, and they brought so much life and personality to their characters that I was kind of like, who are we gonna like replace them with? And then Zach said Rachel and Nick. Nick I had never met or seen in anything before, and the only thing I'd seen Rachel in was Serials. And I was like, I loved her in Serials, so like 100% to Rachel. And Zach, I trust you with Nick, so okay, cool, great. And then like from the very first like read through, like Nick did his voice, and I was like, oh my God, like
it's like the Cookie Monster and Yoda had a love child.
it was just like his voice was so great. And like Rachel, like what you were saying before is like you were just like so impatient, like you brought like the realness to it. I was like, because that's the thing about Sequela, that character is all about like action, movement, let's go, and you just like nailed it. So it was just like you guys brought like different dimensions to it. That was fantastic. So good job.
And then all of you brought amazing talent and skill to everything. And one of the easiest recording process, you all were just champs.
Yay.
I think unless anybody has any other answers to that question.
Well, okay. What I thought Tone was going to say earlier was that not enough credit has been bestowed to Zach, because Zach did such an amazing job helping all of us out, making sure like everything was smooth as possible. Zach killed it. So shout out to Zach.
And Doug, because the sound editing on the final is just like so perfect. It's exactly what I hoped for. So it's so good.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant team.
You'll
For
be
the
able to
listeners
tell how
out there.
good it is by listening to it. SoTheater.com/merchandise for just $5. And you can see the fruit of Doug and I's labor on the sound end. Well, not see, you'll hear it.
Hear the fruit.
Yeah.
You'll hear our fruit.
You know that classic phrase, pick up a fruit and listen to it. You'll hear the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, that's
This is just nonsense now. We're at the end of the night. I've lost the sun and I'm completely in a dark room because we're moving and I don't have a lamp in here anymore. I thought the sun would stay. So let's go ahead and say goodnight Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Kelly, Rachel, Tone, and Josh. I would also like to thank Kayla Williams, our graphic designer, Doug Borntrager for the sound design, Henry Bateman, our technical director, and the whole No staff, Liz Carmen, Tamara Winters, and our executive producing and artistic director, Andrew Hungerford. I've been Zach Robinson. And before we go, don't forget to download the show. I think I've said the link enough tonight.
Where is it?
$5. And we also have a catalog of 12 other shows that you can check out.
Including
Didn't check when I wrote the
mine.
script. There might, another one is
another good.
Kelly's.
Almost Midnight, Almost Jazz. It's so good. Original music.
Finally,
I did right.
by Daniel Zimmer.
That's right.
Finally, be sure to check out our first brand new touring show, All's Fair, written by me and my partner, Alex Rouse. Music and lyrics by James Allen. It is touring to a neighborhood near you for the next 2 weekends. Check it out at notheater.com/allsfair for more information. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a fantastic rest of your evening.